I'm Katie, and today our theme is adventure. And our guest is Cassidy Robinson, who just completed a Bike Beyond adventure last summer. So she's here to talk to us about that and about her life since then and about things leading up to that. So I'll let Cassidy introduce herself.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Cassidy Robinson. Like Kate said, I'm the writer and also a logistics coordinator on Beyond Type 1's team Bike Beyond. I have had diabetes now for over 25 years. I was diagnosed when I was 2, so it's like literally my entire like memory, I think, is diabetes. So I'm just super happy to be talking about adventure because it's the theme of my life.
Yeah, and it's a great theme, I think, because of everything that you've been through recently. And I know that you have been writing about it a lot, and you actually were, sharing that on Beta Change on our website, doing a series about lessons from Bike Beyond that you learned. So people ask you a lot of questions about it. And what I was wondering is, do you find new things to talk about related to Bike Beyond, as you keep reliving that and kind of sharing that experience over and over?
Yeah, I actually told my teammates once, I will never get sick of talking about Pythions. I honestly think I'll be excited to talk about it for forever. And I think for me, whenever I talk about it with someone, whether you have type 1 diabetes or you don't, your questions about something like Bike Beyond, in which a bunch of diabetics hop on bikes and ride across America, your questions are different based on who you are and how much you know about diabetes. So it's always the conversation is never the same, based on who I'm speaking with. The other thing is we had so many layers to Bike Beyond. There's always an avenue to go down, whether it's talking about any of my 19 other teammates, which is it's a lot of personality that I can chat about. Talking about all of the streets we saw and all the different bike paths we were on, how management of blood sugar and insulin went on the road. We also did community events nearly every night. So we were in 61 different cities over 70 days, and so many of the cities had a community event. So not only can I reflect back on Bike Beyond with people of the physical experience of cycling across the country, I also have logged other stories about diabetes from these community events because we just sat at tables talking to people. So it's my knowledge of the things people have experienced with diabetes is so much broader now that I feel I often in conversation can say, oh, I may potentially have a tip for you that doesn't actually come from me. I know it sounds weird, but it comes from this lady that I met in Missouri, and she told me this is her basal strategy when she's playing volleyball. I have so many of those things that happen now.
Oh, that's so cool. And for anyone who's just joining us, Cassidy just completed Bike Beyond last summer, which is a program of Beyond Type 1. And she's here to talk about her experiences with adventure for our adventure minisode. So thanks again, Cassidy. That was great to hear about everything that you've learned and have been discussing with people. And I'm just wondering, do you have a favorite question that someone's asked you or one that sticks out that you remember related to your Bike Beyond experience?
I actually I come back to the one question we got on the road all the time was what's your favorite low snack? And we literally just had a box of honey stingers on Bike Beyond. We literally call it the low snack box. And so that was the only low snack treatment I ever thought about all summer, honey stingers. But often I really love it when people ask about differences in states. And when someone asks me what was your favorite state? Well, that's very hard, but I was super surprised by how beautiful Kentucky was, and I was also super surprised that Kansas is not at all flat. It actually goes uphill gradually the entire state, which is really difficult to cycle. And I think for me, I can physically go back to very specific memories based on the states we were in. because for me, like, that just was my marker of like, okay, we've crossed another state, we've crossed another time zone. And I will like actually relate in my mind, like things that happened on the team and the community events that we had. Like I bring all of that back to like which state we were in. So like that's always fun for me to actually look at like geographic locations.
Yeah, and it's cool that it was surprising to you too, you know, because I think anytime I go to a state that I've never been before, you hear things about it maybe, or like you have a picture in your mind of what it's going to look like. And if it totally is the opposite of that, I think it makes it so much more fun because then you have all these memories from having experienced it yourself that override those, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great.
And like I've had that on previous cross country trips too. Right?
Oh, really?
I've driven cross country twice,
Mm-hmm.
like prior to doing Bike Beyond. And I will always remember like my second trip cross country driving, finishing that 2 weeks worth of driving and being like, wow, I fell in love with South Dakota. And I didn't expect that. Like, oh, if I could go back anywhere, it would be the Black Hills in South Dakota.
Wow.
It's not something I ever would have like imagined for myself.
That actually made me think of another question. And so you've biked across the country and you've also driven across the country. Do you recall like any specific diabetes related things that happened that might be different between those two things? Like was, you know, like I know you talked about in your post for Beta Change that you would think your blood sugar would be like perfect when you're biking across the country because you're super active and like you're, you know, exercising all the time. And I suppose like somebody might think like, well, when you're driving across the country, your blood sugar is probably going to be high all the time because you're like sitting a lot and like eating snacks. So do you have any additional kind of misconceptions that you busted while you were on the road and on the bike?
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I thought like cycling cross country, I literally was gonna be like, I don't need any insulin. My blood sugar is always gonna be like 90 to 110. I was totally wrong, absolutely wrong. I could not have been more wrong. I required so much more insulin and like just it was like I really wish it could have been like a Mythbusters episode in which they strapped a bunch of like I don't know devices to like measure what was happening to me. My blood sugar was kind of similar to that. On my 2 trips driving cross country, the first one I did in 6 days from where I like grew up in Southern California to like I drove the entire 10 to Florida, like to Daytona Beach, Florida.
Wow.
Except I can't drive a stick shift car, so I actually didn't do any of the driving. I did all of the like navigating and entertainment from the passenger seat, which made me actually like put me in charge of the cooler.
And being the DJ probably too, right?
Oh, 1,000,000%, yeah.
Yeah.
Although like I will be the DJ at all times in my life. I love music so much. But because I was in charge of the cooler and I am a little bit of like a health nut, I actually was like, so like my first trip cross country, in 6 days I lost 13 pounds because we only ever ate vegetables. Because I was like, no, I will not eat like gas station snacks. I will not eat chips. I was like, the potential to like have crazy wonky blood sugars and just like feel like a total slob is so high in this environment that I was like, I will do anything I possibly can to avoid it. So I remember like flying back to Southern California. My parents picked me up from the airport and they were like, "What happened? You have a skeleton. What happened to you?" And I was like, "I don't know. I just like ate a lot of vegetables. Like I spent 6 days eating like a lot of broccoli and cucumbers and bell peppers with hummus and like basically that's it."
Yeah.
Wherein like my second drive cross country was for 2 weeks. It was with my dad and when I was like moving to New York. And that was also like I just decided that I was gonna be the queen of the cooler to like make the like food experience. Like as a T1D, I was trying to like make it as easy on myself as possible. But just like did not do as good of a job. Because I like had a lot of insulin resistance and I remember like I would get out of, it was also like a longer period of time, right? So I remember like I would get out of the car and make it a point to like do jumping jacks at every single gas station.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would 100% like be walking circles around the gas stations and doing jumping jacks in the parking lot. So I was like,
That's
oh, like
awesome.
I'm so insulin resistant. I just need to do like anything I can to help myself.
Yeah. And I think, being able to do those type of things is great because you're really thinking outside the box and like, I don't know. I think, yeah, it's terrible that you have to do them because, your blood sugar is being ridiculous. But, doing that kind of stuff I think is good for, especially to share with other people who might be like, well, what am I going to do while I'm on this road trip?
Totally. And like also I think it's just good for like just anyone. Like recently I was spending a lot of time like on trains and in which like I would just like do lunges up and down the train because like I think it's just good for you to be physically like active at all times, at
Mm-hmm.
all times anyway. Right? So like whether you're a T1D or not, like even if you're just a parent of like a T1D who's like going on a road trip, like I don't know, some kind of like challenge to your children of like who can do the most push-ups at the gas station is probably a good thing, even for your children who don't do it.
Yeah. And as somebody who's done lunges in the airport, totally
Yeah,
understand. Because, yeah, sometimes you need to move, and especially when you're dehydrated and you're not eating regularly and like all the things that come with traveling. I think finding those little hacks is really important because you just have to do what works for you, right?
yeah, totally.
Yeah. So you are not new to adventure. You have been doing many kinds of adventures all throughout your life. What I was wondering is how has such a big adventure as Bike Beyond impacted your relationship with adventures? Like, what was it like before you went, like, the most intense adventure you'd been on, for example? And then now that it's over, and now that you've spent, as you were just telling me, the last couple months living in a different place all the time, I'm just wondering, like, how does that affect how you think about planning trips, and how do you, how is your relationship with adventuring now?
Yeah, so like in my previous history with adventure is actually it's a really I've been thinking about like it's a very interesting for me to think about that relationship when I was young, even like to the last couple of years because as a child, like I've just always loved being outdoors, right? So like everything I do adventure wise has something to do like with a correlation to the outdoors I always feel like because
Mm-hmm.
like I grew up as a kid and like I just loved being outside. I loved playing in the dirt, I loved running, I loved like playing with football. We went camping every single summer and like there was always some kind of hiking involved. I like through high school like would run constantly, not like competitively, just like on the trail outside by
Cool.
myself. And then through kind of like starting in college, I really dedicated myself to hiking and backpacking. So
Mm-hmm.
even for me, like I love going out and like being just like in the backcountry for like 3 to 5 days. It makes me so happy. But like managing T1D in that situation took so much failure and like learning. And even for me, I remember like one of the reasons I didn't want to go on an insulin pump is because I was like, how am I going to take all the supplies out into the woods? I was like, oh, I can't. I conceptually like could not understand how I was going to be like a medical device hearing diabetic outside, like in the backcountry, which is like I've done. I've like hiked with my pump on, with my pump off. Like I've done everything under the sun, like diabetes device wise or outside. Um, and like even I've always even leaving California and like moving to New York. My father's from New York, so I do have family there. But when I was leaving, someone said like, "Oh, it's so weird. Like, why would you go all the way across the country? Can't you go like a couple states away, or like can't you just go to Northern California?" And I was like, well, like to kind of like explain my head and like justifying where I was going and what I was doing is that I literally like I want to live everywhere and experience everything. And like that's just inside of me. That's like always been.
Yeah.
Like I will like if you I'm the person that you call when you need someone to just say yes to an adventure. Right? Like I will say yes without hesitation, whether or not there's a lot of plans or very few plans. Like I just believe that you should like live with no hesitation.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, like coming off of Bike Beyond, in which like I was the most time I had ever spent like away from work, honestly. Like even with
Mm-hmm.
all of my adventuring, I have like worked in an office job since I was 15. Like in my professional life, I stare at a computer all day, like as an office manager and bookkeeper. And so it was the longest amount of time that I've ever spent away from work since I was like 15 years old. And coming out of that experience now, I am so absolutely addicted to just like being on the move at all times. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to find like any excuse possible to just like be in motion, experiencing something awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I also think like there's probably some kind of like actual physical like addiction to like the act of being physical, like to endorphins, right? So like when we finished Bike Beyond, I literally like I spent 2 weeks at home with my parents and my brother, and then I immediately moved into a tent in the middle of the Eastern Sierras here in California, and like lived in a tent for 40 days, just so I could like do a lot of writing about my experience, but also like I needed to decompress, I needed to sleep, but I also like really like just wanted to continue being physical, right? So I just went hiking every single day for 40 days. Like on my rest days, I rode my bike. Um, so I feel like even right now, moving into like further in 2018, definitely like projecting toward 2019, I am thinking about adventure on a much larger scale of things that are like, as much as I love going on a day hike, like I will go and like bust out up the top of a mountain, whether it's like 4 or 5 miles or whether it's 20 miles, like that doesn't like affect me. But now I'm starting to think like, oh yeah, I would like to through hike the Pacific Crest Trail. Like, oh yeah, like I would definitely love to cycle back across America. Right? Like the adventures are just getting like much larger in my head now. So we'll see how that goes.
In scope and scale and everything like that.
Oh.
Yeah, they're changing. So, what do your family and friends think about this? So, I know that you send adventure updates to your fans, and I think that that's great because you do have fans and you have people that you keep aware of what you're doing, and you inform them of your trips and what you've done and what you're going to look to do. So what gave you the idea to first start kind of sending those on a large scale? And also like, what responses have you been getting? Has it been, are people dumbstruck by the fact that you lived in a tent for 40 days or, how do they react? But, everyone who cares about you and is really, I'm sure, very interested in what you're up to lately.
Yeah. So those those update emails, I love that. The idea of me having fans is so funny. But just like those emails started quite literally. Like the first one only went to like my family, which is huge. I have so many family members; it's insane. But
Mm-hmm.
like that original email went to my family members and every person who had donated for Bike Beyond. Like I personally like our team was raising money for Beyond Type 1. I raised $10,000 last year, like during Bike Beyond.
Cool.
And I wanted to make sure that every person who donated one single dollar or like 50 cents, it did not matter what the amount was, knew that I wasn't like, I didn't just like, Bike Beyond was transformational for me, like from like, I think my personality, but also like it completely transformed my relationship with diabetes, which is such a strange concept because my entire life has been diabetes, but I just relate to it so differently. And so I
Yeah.
wanted my family and the people that donated and like made that transformation possible for me to know like what direction I was going in and really like where my head was at. And so basically like those emails started as just like, I think I sent the first one like days before I was moving into my tent in the Sierras. And it really just started as like, honestly, I didn't think I was going to have cell service or like Wi-Fi or any of the things, like any access to the internet, nothing. I was totally wrong. Like I had Wi-Fi quite often actually. But I wanted everyone to know like one thing, like I wanted to thank them for like making that possible, but two, like let them know like I didn't disappear. I'm not like avoiding your calls or your emails. I'm just in the middle of the woods living out of a tent. And so I really loved I like writing, right? Like I love it when people know what's going on. And so I continued like sending these update emails because like even coming out of living this year, right? Like, I left the tent and then every day, or excuse me, every month, like every 30 days I moved after that. So I like left the tent and came back to Southern California. I went to the East Coast after the like Beyond documentary premiered. I ended up back in California and then back out on the road for another month, and like my whole like, the adventure train quite literally just kept rolling, like just like
Yeah.
But quite often when I send those emails, like what I get back is just like a "you go girl" a lot. Like I've never had anyone respond to that and be like, "Why?" No one is asking like
Yeah.
why, which I feel like is probably the impetus for why I do anything, is because I never stop asking why. But every single time I get something back, it is just like, yes, go you. I wish I was you. Like, I would like to be out with you on the road. And I'm like, yeah, me too. Like, I want everyone to be along with me on the ride. Right? Like, in my perfect world, I would own a school bus and just bring all of my friends with me to do everything. Right?
That sounds great.
I would love to just like have a mega adventure crew that could roll around experiencing life in all its best forms at all.
Amazing. I support that 100%. I think that would be great. So are you, while you're going out, how long do you plan to go out diabetes wise? Like when you were living in temp for 40 days and things like that, does it determine, when you have to come back, like that kind of thing? Or are you like, I'll just stay till or, however much insulin I have or something like that. Is that something you take into consideration when you're making those plans?
Definitely.
Okay.
So even like for Bike Beyond, like I knew I'd be gone for 10 weeks. So I actually like with Walt like came to stay with me and I literally like laid out on the floor 2 weeks worth of supplies and then shipped them. I like bagged them in Ziploc containers, shipped them ahead on the road to like every family member or friend who I knew was going to show up somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So I left New York with 3 weeks worth of supplies and then knew every 2 weeks that I would have someone with additional supplies for me so that I would technically never run out. And
Wow.
I ran out of sensors.
Wow.
Even prepared for that, I still ran out of sensors and like all of my end lights fell off of me on bike runs. And so I rode 2 weeks of the trip without CGM data, like just rode
Wow.
blind, which is like, I've only been on the CGM for 3 years, so for me it actually wasn't that foreign of a concept.
Yeah.
But so leaving that, like I knew I'd have those 10 weeks. I knew exactly, like I had a spreadsheet of exactly like every infusion set I would need, every sensor I would need, every single unit of insulin I thought I was going to use, and I used way more insulin than I predicted.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
the additional insulin that I had sent ahead of me to like all of my aunts and my friends, like really maybe I really needed it. When I went to the Sierras, there was a winter cutoff date for the campsite that I was living in. So I knew that I would not be allowed to stay past Halloween. I drove there I drove there the last week of August, like a couple days beforehand, got my hands on a car because I was planning on just like having my bike. So I actually got my hands on a car a couple days beforehand and knew that I would be there like for at least a month and a half, or like it could have been potentially 2 months. So I just took 2.5 months worth of supplies.
Okay.
And I actually did. There was a moment when one of my friends came up from Southern California just to like go hiking with me for a few days, and I almost had him bring additional supplies for me. I did have more insulin like sent to the local post office, like local delivery, because I was just like, you have to be overly prepared, I feel like. And I'm like a supply hoarder. I'm always terrified that I'm going to run out of things anyway. Most recently, I had planned to be on the road for like 6 months. And that, supply-wise, was the first time that I ever had to say, like, I cannot take everything with me that I'm going to need for this entire adventure. And so basically, I like did what I did for Bike Beyond. I like sat down and packed Ziploc, like gallon Ziploc bags of like month worth of supplies, and just like left them with my parents to have them mail them ahead for me. Which I did. Like I had to have that happen. It happened like one time on their own. I didn't have a supply, a resupply. But like, even that, it's like totally possible, right? Like, what I love about like
it's not impossible.
The diabetes community is that like it does not matter where you are, right? Like T1D is like it affects everyone irrespective of the geography. So like if you get somewhere where you're like really in a bind, all you have to do is hop on the internet and ask for help. And like you will find a diabetic. Quite literally, like I found a diabetic in the middle of the woods. Like met a guy with T1D who had just been like up for a fishing trip with his family. So like if I would have desperately needed supplies, quite literally you can find a diabetic anywhere who can help you.
That's literally happened to me. I was hiking in New Zealand in the middle of the woods and met a random guy who had diabetes. So I was like, cool, this is great. Like we have friends everywhere. But like, isn't that so funny how you're just like,
I mean, it's like one of the most fascinating aspects, I think, of T1D is that it's like, it is literally like a disease that does not discriminate. So it doesn't matter where you are. Like you can find another diabetic anywhere.
Yeah, and I think it's great because that's why we have friends all over the world, right? Like that's why we're friends. Like that's why, you know, because it's just, I think something that, you know, since it's so universal, it opens a lot of doors that way too, you know, for friendship and getting your bus of adventurers together.
Seriously. Hopefully for me, like all of my travel has really been like in the US. I've only ever left the United States to like go to Brazil once and to go to Mexico a ton because I went to college in San Diego. But like I think like international travel is now like a giant possibility, even if you're just looking at like the T1D community, right? Oh, yeah, this can be awesome. Now there's like a place to stay everywhere too. Not only do you get friends, you like also like get a couch to sleep on. Great.
Yeah, I think it's awesome for sure. So before we sign off, Cassie, I was wondering, do you want to talk about anything you have coming up that you're interested in sharing, or how can people who have questions on anything we just talked about contact you? All the good stuff.
I have one thing that I'm like committed to doing. So I honestly like just didn't think I would have enough time to do that many things. Now, in regards to adventure, the reason I didn't have time is because I like have adventures planned really for the entire year, except for like a bunch of travel for weddings, which I still consider an adventure because I love weddings. But so when these couple months like opened up in my schedule, I immediately came home and like signed up for a triathlon because I've never done one before. It just seems really fun. So in the first weekend of May, I'm like competing in it's my first triathlon. It's also like my first athletic competition because I do not consider that beyond a competition. It was not. So this will be the first time when I actually like compete against people for something, and I'm like, okay, totally new territory, but it has been really exciting. Like before Bike Beyond, I had to learn how to ride a bike. For this, I have to learn like how to swim because I'm basically like flounder around in the water. So I'm like learning how to swim right now, and it's really
Nice.
fun.
Hey, if you can, I think if you can learn how to ride a bike and then ride it from New York to San Diego, I think you'll be good. You'll be good.
Literally, like, that's. I went in with that attitude. I was like, yeah, if I couldn't ride a bike before Bike Beyond happened, I can definitely like pal around in the pool and learn how to swim for like 500 meters. I'll be fine. So I have that. I have potentially like a month or a month and a half, hopefully just a month and a half, like very long endurance activity that I can't yet talk about, but I'm really excited for. So like, hopefully the Data Change peeps are like tuned in for updates. Oh, my adventure updates, yeah. So if people are trying to get in touch with me, I'm super active on Facebook, so I will always respond on Facebook. I will also always respond on Instagram.
On Instagram? Okay.
Yeah. What is the Instagram? It's my name. It's Cassidy J with an underscore. So I have like a public
Bring it on the bottom of the screen so people can find you.
I have a very public Instagram in which like all of my photos, I think, tend to do with like the adventurous things I'm up to in the outdoors, and all of my stories tend to be like, oh, diabetes things. It's always like a big success or like a weirdo like infusion set leader that I just like I've never
understood. I follow you on Instagram and I think it's great. So I hope that everybody who's watching definitely does. I'm putting it on the screen.
Yeah, so if anyone is interested in being included in the adventure update you guys, I'm happy to have them.
Okay, so if they're like, if you get a ton of like DMs being like, hey, I heard there were these adventure updates.
And yeah, I owe a really nice scene.
Okay.
Someone recently said to me that they like the way that I start my updates with a lot of weather sass.
Oh.
No, I don't. I was like, yeah, okay. I guess I'm really tapped into weather, but like everything I do is outside, so I have to.
Well, listen, I think it's relevant. Like all of it definitely is. So I think your weather updates are pertinent to your outdoor adventures. So people can take that information along with everything else that you share in those. But Cassidy, thank you so much for taking time to talk today. I think that, you know, your experiences are really great for everybody who has diabetes or who just wants to quit their job and adventure like you. So thanks for sharing. And for everybody who's watching this in other time zones, feel free to, you know, leave any comments or questions for Cassidy below the video because she'll be very responsive to those. And as we said, you can follow her on Instagram. And you can check the Data Change site for anything that we post about Cassidy in the future, because maybe she'll want to share more of her insights with us, which would be super cool. So, yeah, anything else, Cassidy, before we wrap it up that you want to share?
Thank you for having me, because I love talking to you at all times. On the weather sass front, I'm very happy I'm not with you in New York.
All right, you know, we can still be
I love seeing your face.
Yeah, and everyone who's watching does too. And I know that, you know, talking to somebody who's done something as cool as Beyond Type 1, you know, the Bike Beyond project is great. And I know that everybody was pumped to hear about it. So thanks for keeping talking about it, even though you keep getting more questions.
I'll talk about it forever.
We appreciate it. I'm so glad you talked about it forever. Great. Well, thanks everybody for joining in. And like we said, if you are watching this after the fact, just leave your comments below and keep your eye out for more Data Change minisodes.